Rob Wittman coming up momentarily. And I'm having too much fun today because the president fighting back against all these stinky trade deals that we've been screwed on for the past 40 years. You know what? You know you're onto something when all of the globalist whiners combine at the same time. Okay, this is like the perfect reason why you know these tariffs are the right thing to do. Don't take my word for it. Here's the perfect storm, all right? Paul Ryan whining. That's good. Ben Sasse whining. Even better. Pierre Trudeau whining. That's like the trifecta of all time. Then you've got the European Union threatening to take us to court, to the World Court, and sue us over our trade policies because, what do you mean? We can't screw you anymore? We've been screwing you for 40 years. You can't just stop that. I mean, this is like, and if you add the European Union in, it's like you go to the 7-Eleven today and you play a straight 4 box. I mean, a straight 4 numbers, no box, like 7, 8, 10, whatever the numbers are. You just play it straight for $5 and it comes out and you win like $20,000. I mean, that's really what it is. You can't get better than this. This is better than the Daily Double, better than Exacta, better than Trifecta. All the enemies whining at the same time. It's got to be good. Life is good today. We're getting our jobs back. Hey, Canada, stop screwing us timber, dairy, furniture, right? It's over, right? The gig is up now. Now you got to do business because now we got a president in there that's not beholden to Goldman Sachs. It is a beautiful thing. Joining us now, Congressman, 1st District, Republican, conservative Rob Wittman. Congressman, great to have you with us.
John, great to be with you this morning. Thanks for the opportunity.
Lots to talk about. Let's start with North Korea. Mike Pompeo meeting with North Korean officials last night in New York City. Still trying to get some kind of a timing done for this summit. I couldn't imagine it would be on June 12th. That's 11 days away. I would think too much planning now that's got to go into that. But who knows? What do you think?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is to set the groundwork for this meeting. I think it's very smart to have the Secretary of State meeting with the Deputy Chairman from North Korea to pretty much lay out what denuclearization will entail, that it will be permanent, that it will be verifiable, to make sure that there's not a difference in expectations about what this meeting is going to be about. I think you have to do that to make sure that the meeting is set up to have some level of success, or at least be the first step in a process to where you get verifiable, complete, and permanent denuclearization. I think that's critical. That's why these meetings, I think, have to occur beforehand. It sounds like they went fairly well. I think it's good, too, that there's some message discipline coming out, and that only one person is talking about what's going on, and that's Secretary Pompeo, and he is not divulging any of the details. That way you keep all of the cards on the table for what the administration is pushing for with this, and then make sure, too, that ultimately when the meeting date is set, that the president is the one that announces that. As you know, a letter is going to be delivered today from Kim Jong-un to the president, which is another significant step in putting this forward. And, John, I think that, this is absolutely the direction that we need to be moving in. The key with this, and I am confident that Secretary Pompeo has made this perfectly clear with the North Koreans, and that is this. This must be complete and permanent denuclearization, not only of the missiles themselves, the launch platforms, but also the nuclear warheads and the capability to produce fissile material that can be used on a nuclear weapon. I think those things have to be part of it, and all of that has to be completely verifiable, and it has to be repeatedly verified before the United States takes a single step in the direction of lifting sanctions or doing anything there to benefit the North Koreans. I think that they have to show that they can be trusted with this because, as you know, the Kim dynasty has not shown at any point, whether it's Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, or Kim Jong-un's grandfather, that they have in any way, shape, or form been trustworthy or have lived up to any agreement that they have entered into in the past. So I think this is is a good step in the right direction. But again, I think you have to go into this with a healthy amount of skepticism as to ultimately what the North Koreans will do.
Well, let me just ask you, though, I thought one of the most unfortunate statements made, and I appreciate, Congressman Wittman, what you just said about message discipline, because I really thought when John Bolton, National Security Director, popped off on TV about, the Libyan model, I thought that was about one of the most ludicrous statements I've ever seen made in that office since, Susan Rice with Benghazi, just ludicrous. But when you're asking him to denuclearize, you're taking away all of his regime security, right? Because all they're interested in is perpetuating their dictatorship. And the president has said, look, I will guarantee your safety or your regime. What type of scenario would that be? I mean, they can't guarantee that his regime is not overthrown by its own people. But if you do look at the Libyan model, I mean, Gaddafi disarmed, and then we turned on him, and we were part of the operation to depose him, and he ended up in a drain pipe, stabbed 50 times. How would they work through that?
Well, you're right. The comment by John Bolton and projecting the Libyan policy was not the right thing to do, because Kim Jong-il looked at that and said, "Hey, the Libyan policy resulted in Muammar Gaddafi being killed. That's not the outcome that I want," and then that set things back. I do think there's some things that can happen with this, John. First of all, is that I think a very important step of this is to actually enter into a treaty, not a ceasefire. Remember, we are currently just in a ceasefire with North Korea. So I think getting an actual peace treaty with North Korea is a step in the right direction. And looking to, as I have visited South Korea multiple times, South Korea is still very interested in reunification. That's probably a way where you could allay Kim Jong-il's fears. But the key is, how is that going to affect the entire Korean peninsula? And then the Chinese don't like the idea, too, of a reunified Korea. So there is no ultimate guarantee of Kim's survival. So I think what you have to be able to do is to look at what you can reasonably provide to him as assurance of what you'll do to support him in exchange for verifiable and permanent taking out of his nuclear arsenal. So that I think is realistic. I don't think that you can create 100% guarantee, because, as you said, there are other conditions there. I do think, though, that one of the elements there that is most compelling to folks in the entire region is the concept of reunification. Now, that's going to be a tremendous impact on South Korea. They are very much in favor of that, but as you know, the economy in North Korea is almost zero. The economy in South Korea, extraordinarily healthy. So if you were to do that, you'd have to phase it in. And then, of course, if Kim Jong-un is interested in continuing in power, then, how does that power-sharing agreement happen between South Korea and North Korea? I mean, obviously, President Moon isn't going to give up his position. So, if you're going to do that, there's some complexity there. But I think that's probably the long-term way that folks there on the Korean Peninsula would want this ultimately to play out.
You're on the John Frederick Radio Network. We're with Republican Congressman from the 1st District of Virginia, Rob Wittman. Rob Wittman chairs the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Sea Power and Projection Forces around the globe. Congressman, a lot of talk today about tariffs and trade. The president not ending the extension on the tariffs on aluminum and steel. The president determined to bring our jobs back. Also telling the European Union the party on cars is over. Just to give you an example, we try to sell a Ford truck in the European continent. Or let's take Germany. we have to pay, the Germans would have to pay 29% for that truck over what our people pay, cost, because they have a 19% import value-added tax and a 10% import duty tax. So if the truck is $30,000, they have to pay $39,000. If it's $50,000, they have to pay $65,000 U.S. So they don't buy them because they can't pay the 30% tariffs. Yet they ship in BMWs, Mercedes, Volkswagens. They pay a 2.5% tax to unload the cars from the ship to the port. That's what the longshoremen do. Now, tell me how that's fair.
Well, John, it's certainly not fair, and I think that the effort with trade agreements with other nations and the trade deals, NAFTA and CAFTA, have not benefited the United States, and I am all for getting better trade deals with all these nations, and I think the effort to negotiate individual trade deals with these nations is certainly the way to go, because each nation has its own idiosyncrasies in how it deals with the United States. My concern, and I was talking to a number of businesses in the 1st District yesterday, my concern is the impact that's going to occur with businesses here with the potential retaliatory efforts by the nations involved, whether it's the EU, Mexico, Canada, and those impacts are going to be significant here on businesses in the 1st District. So, listen, I'm all for having these fair trade deals. I do worry significantly about the impact that it has on businesses here. As I talked to them yesterday, there's a significant amount of angst out there about what it means for them. And these are folks on the manufacturing side and the agriculture side. So I'm very sympathetic and concerned about what potentially happens with that. Now we'll see how all of this ultimately shakes out. It's a lot of back and forth right now, and assertions and threats about what will or will not happen. But ultimately, I think the president, in his effort to get better trade deals, is absolutely spot on. My concern with tariffs and additional duties in how we are treating these other products there and what potentially happens with our products can be problematic. And the problem is it's disproportional. So some areas of the economy it'll affect disproportionately. And of course, these countries, if they retaliate, can only do so in certain ways, because there's some products that they just don't transact. But the ones that they do, will have an impact on some of our businesses here in the 1st District. So that's where my concern rests, and I want to make sure that we're doing all we can to help those businesses. They're in a time of growth right now, John, with all of the things that are going on here. The economy is really taking off, and I want to make sure it continues in that way and doesn't have negative effects on businesses that are just starting to get back on their feet.
I appreciate that perspective, and this does have to be done the right way. I'm a protectionist. Everybody knows that, so we come at this from a little bit of a different perspective. I think our selling of goods works itself out. At the end of the day, we're the biggest market. We hold all the cards. Everybody wants to sell to us, so we should be on the top end of this, not on the bottom end. I've got a minute and a half, Congressman. I want to get to the Italy situation. Populist government taking over there. They're talking about exiting Brexit. So what do you think?
Well, you see a lot of that. I mean, you saw that happen in Great Britain, where people are wanting a system where you have less massive amounts of government. You want to make sure that there's more autonomy within these nations, and I think people have looked at where their countries are currently and say, hey, it's not working. We've got to do something different. And Italy, much like many other nations, have said, hey, we want to go in a different direction, because the status quo in their minds, and I think very clearly in reality, is not working. So I think you see a lot of that happening around the globe, and folks are speaking out and saying, hey, we're going to express our dissatisfaction with status quo by saying let's change, and let's change significantly.
All right, that's going to be it. Final word, Congressman Rob Wittman, Republican, 1st District Chairman of the Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee in the United States Congress. That is a very key slot in the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thank you for being with us. Great discussion, as always. You're one of the best guys I get on just pure policy, and I really appreciate it. Your knowledge of our military preparedness world, you have such a good grasp of it. Thanks for being with us, sir.